I've talked before about the four biggest dangers that come with not having a complete estate plan. I've called these the four horsemen of the estate planning apocalypse. Now, the horseman I want to focus on today is loss of assets. When people pass without an estate plan, their possessions and property are easy to lose track of or fall into unwanted hands. Obviously, this isn't what we want. If your plan is incomplete, your assets aren't safe from the creditors, the government, or even unwanted family members. So, how are we going to deal with loss of assets and defeat this horseman? Well, there are three ways that he can show up. Version number one, we can't find your assets. One of the biggest problems we have in probate is just finding assets. Think about it. Imagine what happens 5 minutes after you're gone. Everything that you know about your assets is trapped in your head, easily accessible to you, is gone. Your family members, whether it's kids, spouse, best friend, brother, they're not going to know where to find anything. If you passed right now, where would your family go to find out information about your stuff? This is potentially one of the easiest things to fix. It comes with just sitting down and writing out exactly what you have and where you have it. People need to know that you have a bank account at Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Cadence, Amegy, wherever it is. The thing is, we want to make sure we know where to go find things. So, here are some things you can do to make sure that you're helping avoid this version of this horseman. One, start with having a list of your assets. We don't need to the penny values on this, but we need to know where to find things. We don't want to spend a bunch of time calling Cadence, Northern Trust, Amegy, and every other bank in the list trying to figure out if you had an account there. We want to know these are the banks we need to go to, and these are the ones we can avoid because it's not going to yield anything. We want to know, hey, this is where to find things. So, just having that simple list of your assets is going to save a lot of time and effort for your family members after you're gone. They're going to have the roadmap to find out where things are. Next, think about your digital assets. Not only is this things like digital photos that are on your phone, but what about accounts online where people can find out information about you, things that they may want to access? Transitioning your Facebook account to a legacy profile. Maybe you own domains. You want to make sure that you've transitioned that so people aren't having to bid for the domain that you owned. You may also be thinking about things like NFTs and cryptocurrency. Whatever it is, making sure people know not only that you own it, but how to access it. This may take a little more effort than just listing out Bank of America and Chase, but again, the purpose is not to lose the asset. We want to make sure that your family knows how to access this and where it is. Another thing that's surprisingly common, checking your state's unclaimed property. Now, assets get turned over to the state on a regular basis because people have forgotten to cash a check or close out an account properly. The state here in Texas, the Texas controller will have a website called claimittexas.org where you can go and see if there's any property in your name. This simple search should be done every year or so just to make sure nothing's popped up. We've had clients who have found thousands of dollars that are in their name just waiting to be claimed. It's your money, go get it. Additionally, think about the advisors in your life. Maybe some of them have already done some of this work. Again, if you've got a financial advisor who tracks some but not all of your accounts, make sure that they know what all of your accounts are. Sure, they may not be managing those accounts for you, but you're going to want them to have access to that for the same reason you'd want the rest of your family to. If something happens to you, we know where to go find your stuff. Finally, think about the assets you haven't identified. Points and miles are an easy one. What else do you have that's of value that people may not know about? Again, points and miles, maybe a collection in your house. Anything that's worth more than, say, $500, either alone or as a collection, you should have a list of just so people know what to look for. It doesn't mean that they necessarily want to keep it, but they may unintentionally toss it out, not knowing that your baseball card collection was actually worth something. Finally, a safe deposit box, not a safety deposit box. A safe deposit box is something that a lot of people still have as a great place to store documents and valuables. Making sure people know which bank it's at and which location will help save them time when it comes to finding out what's in there. Additionally, if you're planning on keeping a copy or the original of your last will in that safe deposit box, make sure people know where to get it and that it's in there. Again, if you're going to put something in a safe deposit box, you don't need to have the full inventory elsewhere. But if there's something like an original of your last will that you're going to keep in the safe deposit box, make sure your family knows that the original is in there. Having a way to communicate, go find it here, so that they don't have to spend the time turning the house upside down looking for an original, or potentially spending the time and effort on a court order to go open that safe deposit box because they don't know if it's in there or not. We're thinking about making it easy for people to find things so that they don't just get lost. Problem number two, beneficiary wastes. This is a real source of loss for family members. Why? If we put the assets in the hands of the wrong beneficiaries at the wrong time, they may magically transform those dollars and cents into cigarettes, bubble gum, Lego sets, Fabergé eggs, Maseratis 15 minutes after they received it. Now, you may be fine with this, or you may not be fine with this. Why do we care about this? Well, you've worked hard to pass these assets down to them, and you want to make sure that they get used in a responsible way or in the way that you intended by the beneficiaries. Sure, we want to let them have some fun with it, but you do want to make sure that the bulk of the assets get used in the way that you intended for them, not the way the beneficiary does when they just get them. So, what can we do to avoid this version of the horseman? Well, we're going to want to think about how we set it up potentially in trusts with the beneficiary in mind. It doesn't mean we won't trust them eventually to take over and control these assets, perhaps as their own trustee or with control over a certain portion of it. But we want to think through this. Again, the goal is to not have the beneficiary waste the asset 15 minutes after they got it. So putting some controls, usually in the form of a trust, will help mitigate this. The third and final version of the horseman of loss of assets that we're worried about is predators, creditors, and future ex-spouses. This is also sometimes called asset protection. This deals with losing assets to the wrong people entirely. It's not that your beneficiary wasted it, it's somebody who you didn't even intend on benefiting comes and grabs it. So you don't want the wrong family member or a nefarious outside actor coming in and taking over as your executor. You also don't want them taking your assets away when you intended it for your family member, whoever that is. So, planning for creditors, whether they're your creditors or the beneficiary's creditors, to ensure that they're paid in the correct order and with the correct funds helps mitigate this. Again, we're looking to use the law in a way that we can stop a creditor, predator, or that future ex-spouse from taking assets that you didn't really intend for them. So, thinking about the concerns you may have about a current spouse of a beneficiary, their future creditors, how can we address that for them now? So, what do we do to make sure that we're minimizing this threat? Asset protection planning for somebody other than you tends to look a lot like trust planning for your beneficiaries. We're generally setting things up in such a way that they can't be reached by those creditors. Putting a trust in place with the beneficiary, even as trustee, can still mitigate a lot of the damage that can be done by these folks. Why? If you've got the right trust protection language in place, the trustee is not going to be able to be forced to make a distribution for the benefit of those creditors. Ultimately, this horseman of the estate planning apocalypse can be kept at bay with solid planning and some forethought from you and your attorney. Make sure that you check out my other videos in this series and subscribe for regular estate planning updates. Thanks so much for watching. If you've got other questions about this, go ahead and leave a question in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.